apps. Everyone welcome Jacob Haslehurst.
Good afternoon, everyone. Hope everyone had a good lunch. Today, I'll be talking about writing reusable Django apps. My name's Jacob, as Russell's introduced me. You can find me on Twitter at @hzy_. I live in Melbourne. We're at 7 degrees at the moment. And I work for a company called Gizmag. In my free time, I enjoy taking photos. And I also enjoy making music. If you'd like to talk about either of those things as well as the content of this talk, I'd be more than happy later over the weekend. OK, so a summary of this talk is going to happen in 3 parts. First, we're going to look at what reusable apps are. Second, we're going to walk through step by step and create a reusable app. Third, we're going to look at how Django 1.7 has changed how we go about creating reusable apps. OK, first, what are reusable apps? I think you can succinctly describe reusable apps as apps that can be used in any Django project. Typically, I'd say a good reusable app is an app that solves one problem or a very tightly scoped problem. And so as a kind of average Django developer, why would you want to be creating a reusable app? First of all, it allows you to reuse your code between your projects. So if you find yourself solving the same problem in multiple projects, you can pull that out, put it in a reusable app, and then use that in both. On top of that, it also allows you to share your work with others. The odds are, if you're trying to solve the same problem twice, other people are probably going to benefit from that as well. Next, it helps reduce the size and the complexity of your project, which helps with the maintainability of the project itself by pulling out complicated things into its separate own little app. A side benefit of that is it means you can independently test that reusable app, and you can split apart the tests and have them sitting coexisting. OK, so that's the basics. Let's have a look at a couple of good reusable apps to kind of get a feel for what we should strive for when we're writing reusable apps. First, we have django-taggit. Django-taggit is a generic tagging app by Alex Gaynor. It's a very generic way of adding tags to various models, and it's very easily can plug in, and it's very adjustable so that you can get it to work how you need it to work. Next, we have django-imagekit, which is a generic way of resizing images, once again solving a very core problem that a lot of people face. And then third, we have python-social-auth, which solves the very common problem of needing to do social login for our websites. One thing that's interesting about python-social-auth is it's not just a Django app. It plugs in with a variety of Python web frameworks. OK, so those 3 apps can seem quite abstract. They can seem like someone else much better than me has written those apps. But there's no way I could have written an app like that. So let's have a look at a couple of apps that we've written at Gizmag to maybe set the standard that anyone can really write an app. First, we've written a little app called django-generic-follow, which just simply allows users in your site to just follow anything. We've needed to implement this so that when we have multiple writers and editors working on the same article together, they'll all kind of follow that article, and they'll get notifications about what's going on. And then second, we've written an app called remote-fixtures, which allows us to share our fixtures between our development machines. We often find when we're trying to debug problems, having the same fixture data on both computers really helps. OK, so that's the theory, the underlying theory out of the way. Now let's go through a bit of a worked example and write ourselves a ratings app. It's got one simple requirement, and that's that users should be able to rate any instance of any model in a project up or down. Online ratings are quite polarizing, so we'll call it django-polarize. OK, so let's look at the basic setup. First, just use the GitHub create repository page, and we'll get that to initialize the repository for us. We'll get it to add in a Python gitignore with a bunch of useful gitignore things in there for us. And we'll also get it to add an MIT license for us so that other people know that it's free and permissible to be used. And then when we submit that, we have our project there. And we now clone it down onto our development machine. When we start off, we have two files. We have our license and our README that GitHub has generated for us. And now we're going to create our Polarize app, and then inside of it, place an init.py and a models.py. I find when I'm working on a reusable app, I like to symlink that app into the main project I'm working on at the time, so in this case, Gizmag. And that means I can work on the Gizmag project alongside this reusable app, and I can make sure that they're integrating together properly. Then I just add in Polarize into the installed apps for Gizmag. OK, let's have a look at the models and the migrations and the little tricks that we'll have to pull to get it to work in a reusable app. First up, just have a simple model here for our rating. There's two things of note. First, we're using a generic foreign key to link to the target of the rating. Generic foreign keys are very useful for this sort of thing in a reusable app where you're not quite sure how your app is going to be used in conjunction with other people's projects. The second thing to note is when foreign keying to the user model, you have to make sure to use the auth user model setting. If you try to hard code it, it won't work if someone's using a custom user model. Now, we're going to start off using South migrations. We run schema migration. This is run from the Gizmag project to generate our South migrations. And out pops our migrations. Note it's in the South migrations because we're using South version 1. And we've got this in place, and now we're good to go to run our migrations. We have our giant migrations file here. And there's one little trick you have to pull here, and that's everywhere that the foreign key is being foreign keyed to the user, we'll have to manually go and switch that over to a user model string that we've dynamically generated. OK, so that's our migrations and our models out of the way. Now let's talk about testing. We have to create a few new files here. First, we have our model mixins file, and that's going to contain the code that we're about to test. Then we have another app called tests that sits adjacent to our Polarize app. This contains things specific to tests that we don't want to be installed when we're working with our app. Finally, up the top here, we have our run tests, and that's going to be the script that kind of kicks off the test running process. So then we have a simple model mixin here. Don't really have to bother reading this code, but it just provides a method to get the rating totals. So the total ratings for a given rating target. And then over in our test models, we've got our text snippet model here, which is solely for the use of testing. And we're just applying that mixin to that model. Then we have our test here. It's not really worth reading this test once again, but it's just a simple test that creates a few ratings and makes sure that the numbers add up correctly. So we've got our app here, and we want to be able to run these tests when there's no project around. So how do we do that? We use our runtests.py file. There's two things that are interesting in this runtests file. The first is that we have to manually configure the settings here. So we specify what database backend we want to use, and we specify what apps we want installed for running these tests. And then next, we just use the execute from command line Django management function to kick off our test running. And then when we run our run tests script, it runs and our tests all work. OK, so we've got that working on our local computers. But now we want to be getting this working on continuous integration so that every time a push goes out and every time someone maybe submits a pull request and suggests changes for our app, we want to know that it's working. So to do that, we have to set up Travis CI. First, we create this Travis YML file. And then inside of that, we specify a bit of a build matrix of various versions of Python and Django that we want to support. So we're saying here that we want to support Python's version 2.7.3.4 and Django's 1.5, 1.6, and 1.7 release candidate 2. Then, once we've got that in place, we log into Travis, turn on that repository that we want to deal with, and it'll go and do our build for us. What's really cool about Travis is the way it does the build matrix. So we know that across various versions of Django and Python that this app that we're writing is going to be working. Then when we click into one of these builds, we'll see the run tests output the same as we would if it was running on our local computers. OK, so we've got our testing in place. Everything's kind of good to go. Now we need to package this up and distribute it so that other people can go and install it. To do this, we create a setup.py in the root of our repository. And then inside of that, we use this setup function from setup tools to define things like the name of the package, the version number. And then we also define what the packages are that we want installed. So in this case, we're excluding tests because we don't want that installed when someone installs it. Then we're also defining what the requirements are to install this. So for this, we require Django version greater than 1.5. Now, once that's in place, we run setup.py register, and that registers the name of this package against your PyPI account. And then you run setup.py sdis upload, and that uploads the source distribution of the package to PyPI. Now, from any computer, you can run pip install django-polarize, and it'll go and install this package for us. As well as that, you get the nice, pretty PyPI page, which will show you stuff like download counts. The final thing when dealing with writing a package is you obviously need to document it. There's a few kind of sections that I think are important. First, it's important to talk about compatibility. So in this case, we require Django greater than or equal to 1.5, and we optionally require south greater than or equal to 1.0 if you're using Django 1.5 or 1.6. Then you'll want some installation instructions. So here, that we want to pip install it and then add it to our installed apps. Then finally, some usage instructions. So a bit about how to go and create a rating, and then how to use our get ratings totals mix-in to get those ratings totals. OK, so that's how everything kind of works for up to Django 1.6. Now let's have a bit of a look at how Django 1.7 has changed it up a bit. First, there's the big app refactor that's landed. And that's completely under the hood changed the way apps are loaded into the app registry. To work with this new way apps work, we create an apps.py inside of our Polarize app. And then we define an app config. In this case, all we're defining is just the name and the verbose name of our app. Where this really shines is when you need to hook up signals. And to hook those up, you'll put them inside of the ready method of the app config. Formerly, these were put in the models.py for the app, but that wasn't really the right place and caused all these weird issues. The ready method is the right place for those to be put. To hook that all up to Django, we then, inside of our init.py for our app, we just say that the default app config is the dotted path to our app config. The other big change, as we've heard earlier from Andrew, is the migrations framework. To create these migrations, we run python manage.py makemigrations polarize. And once again, this is run from the gizmag project that we were dealing with earlier. And obviously, the gizmag project has to be running Django 1.7. When we run that, it creates our migrations, and it creates that migration for us. And then we've got our pretty new Django 1.7 migration. And the thing we had to do earlier with the magic to get the user model working, it's done for us now. OK, so with all that said, we can see that it's true that writing a reusable app does have non-trivial overhead. The lines with a star next to them, they're the ones directly related to our app. And then the other ones are just extra stuff that we need to be able to write this app as a reusable app. So maybe half is directly related to our app, and then the other half is extra work we have to do to get it working. I think, however, that the benefits often win out and outweigh the extra work required in writing a reusable app. It helps reduce the size of your projects, it helps reduce the complexity of your projects, and it helps you share your work between your own projects and with others. Thanks for listening. Any questions?
Okay, so again, if anyone has any questions, just make your way to the mic. Rolling, getting things started. Okay, so you've shown lots of stuff here you can work through, and you've got this app template here. Is it genuinely that cookie cutter, though? I'm using that as a bit of a lead here, that there are projects that will do the cookie cutting for you. How much of that needs to vary from project to project, and how much of it is opt-in on some of those things?
It really depends what you're trying to solve. Like a lot of stuff here, we were dealing with, say, models and getting models to work in reusable apps. So you have to do that. You have to apply the same process, but across all reusable apps. For each different sort of feature of Django, there are slight variations on how you would have to approach writing something if you're writing it as a reusable app.
My question kind of leads on from that, actually, in that I've seen things like how to run tests or how to lay out a project, or even whether to use RST or Markdown for the README, all different in different projects. And I'm kind of wondering, is there a central place I can go to find out this is the blessed way of writing a reusable app in terms of structure?
So the app template I've got on the slide there, that's the kind of template that I've developed from looking at various other projects and how they've been structured. And that's the way that I'll go to start up writing my own reusable apps. There's obviously various other ways that people can structure their apps, but this is the way that I've sort of gathered is the best way to approach it.
Okay. And you mentioned a cookie cutter.
Oh, sorry, yeah, okay. So Cookie Cutter is a project that is run by Audrey Roy Greenfield now. It's essentially, you can build a repository that contains a template for a project, not just for a web page. So here is my template, and it's my setup.py file and my travis.yaml file and whatnot, where the braces say, and the name of my project is, put it here. And you run Cookie Cutter over that, and you end up with a whole new project with directories and all the rest of it, with the names substituted where the names need to go. So there are tools to do templating of entire projects, not just templating of an app. I would just follow on from that, though. If we've got people here who are interested about generic forms, people who want to know what the best practices are, that sounds like something that'd be great to put into the tutorial for Django itself. There is a tutorial 6, I think, which is about how to package up your code to reuse it, but it's obviously very, very early stage, or it doesn't go anywhere near as far as YAML and things like that. We have sprints. We can contribute. We can make things bigger and better. So, if that's something you're interested in sprinting on, come and see us during the sprints and we can make that happen. Okay, now if there's no other questions, thank you very much, Jacob.